About 83% of you guys are not subscribed. Subscribing, clicking that like button, and commenting all help me out a lot in doing what I really want to do. Thank you guys so much for all your support. What is going on, guys? Rogue TCG here, bringing another Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG deck profile. Here is the updated version of Magical Musketeer. This deck has changed a little bit since the release of Legacy of Destruction and all those other sets, where we got some new cards that actually do some pretty decent things for the deck. So I felt like it changed to such a degree where I wanted to make a profile just to talk about those cards. So here we are. So let's stop yapping. Let's get into the profile. The Magical Musketeers are an archetype of these cards over here, where they have bonus effects that are activated, that trigger when spells or traps are activated in the same column as these cards. Doesn't matter if it's your column or their column, as long as the spell or trap is activated in the same column, they'll have a bonus effect. And you can see based on the ratios of muskets that we're playing, the effect can vary in how good it is. So do keep that in mind, as well as the fact that Magical Musket spell traps have the effect where if you control a musket on field, or rather the musket effects have them, where if we control them on field, we can activate the spells and traps from hand. So do take this deck profile with a grain of salt, keeping those two things in mind, because functionally, all of these are also hand traps as long as we have a musket on field. So there's that. But let's go down the list. We're on triple Magical Musketeer cast bar. Its column effect is if a spell or trap is activated in column, we can add a Magical Musket card from deck to hand. So that effect doesn't even exclude itself, so you can even add another cast bar from deck to hand if you wanted to. However, it does exclude cards that are with the same name as the spell or trap activated in column. So if you have cast bar and you activate something like Desperado, you can't add another Desperado off that. You have to add something else. So keep that in mind. We're on triple Starfire. Starfire's column effect is to special summon a musket from our deck, except for itself in defense position. So you can see why we're maxing out on these two. We're on double Kid Brave. Kid Brave's column effect is to pitch a musket card to draw 2 cards, which can be helpful because some of our musket cards are just not good in certain matchups, or maybe we brick on too many monsters. We can pitch a monster and try and dig for more cards, like more generic cards. So Kid Brave is not the worst. It's also the highest statted main deck musket that we have, because all the muskets are weenies, being like 1200, 1300. Kid Brave is the largest one that we're playing, being 1600, and Calamity is the second largest at 15, and Doc is the third at 14. Calamity has the column effect, where if spell or trap is activated in column, you can target a musket monster in your graveyard and special summon in defense position, so it's just a monster reborn on legs, which is useful enough to just have it in the deck as one of, since it is tutorable either with Castbar or with Starfire, or we can draw into with Kid Brave. And then our last Magical Musketeer main deck monster is going to be 2 copies of Magical Musketeer Doc. Its column effect lets you target a Magical Musketeer card in graveyard other than the card that was activated in column, and lets you add it back to hand. So it basically lets you recur all your resources exactly to where you want them. So the only cards you're really going to be adding off Doc is either going to be cards like Castbar or Starfire, or any of our spell traps that was not already in our hand, so we can maintain control over the game state, because that's the name of the game with this deck. It isn't killing your opponent, it isn't OTKing them, it isn't stopping everything they do, because if we stop everything they do, we're probably going to get cooked if they do something that we're not expecting them to do. So what we want to do is we want to actually control the game state and allow some things to go through while interacting with our opponents at the worst possible junctions for them, to basically try and ensure they have absolutely nothing to come back for. Because it's not like we're trying to stop them from playing in order to OTK them. We're trying to stop them from playing to deny them those resources that they used in order to get those cards, or to try and make that play in the first place. And our last main deck monster that isn't a hand trap is Eldritch, because we're playing so many spells and traps in this deck that it's just a removal spell at this point. And it also is the largest body our main deck can produce at around 3500 if we use its secondary graveyard effect. So Eldritch honestly has a pretty good fit in this deck, even if we're not playing any cards to search it out. I feel like it's just a good enough one of just to play it. I also like him. Look at him. Now let's go into the musket spell traps. We're on triple cross domination. This one targets a face-up effect monster on the field, negates its effects, and then changes its attack and defense to 0. Or rather, it changes in the order. It changes the attack defense to 0, then it negates the effects. So you can still do it on stuff whose effects are already negated. So there's that. We're on triple Despacito, allowing us to pop a face-up card on field. Triple Last Stand, allowing us to negate a spell or trap card while we control a musket, or rather negates the activation. This one's incredibly strong because it is a counter trap, meaning our opponents have absolutely no recourse if they have no back row, which is pretty keynote. We're on double Dancing Needle, rounding out our Magical Musket main deck cards, basically being DD Crow on crack, allowing us to target 3 cards in the graveyards and banish them, which is really good in this format if you haven't heard, banishing stuff from graveyard or removing graveyard resources. We are on triple Link into the Brains. I'm going to actually talk about this a little bit more when we talk about the Link monster, Magical Musketeer Max. But functionally what this does is it lets you special summon a monster from your hand, its effects negated, and then immediately Link summon a Link monster using monsters you control as material. And then your opponents cannot respond to the Link summon of that Link monster, including if that Link monster has an on-summon effect, they cannot respond to that. And then also if this card's in your graveyard and a Link monster you control is basically removed or destroyed by battle or card effect while it's in the graveyard, you can banish it from your graveyard, target a monster with the same original type as the card that was destroyed, and then add it to your hand. So it's a cool little piece of recursion if our Magical Musketeer Max gets interacted with. We are on triple Pot of Prosperity since we don't really need almost any of this extra deck. The only things we really need is triple Max. And also it is a spell card that we can activate in column of our muskets in order to trigger them, as well as searching for more cards. Here's one of the big inclusions for this new format is going to be 2 copies of Blink Out, allowing us to target a Link monster on the field and return to the extra deck, and then special summon monsters from our graveyard that was sent to it as Link material, or we'd rather we can special monster from our graveyard. We don't have to. However, this card is so incredibly strong because it lets you dodge interaction on Magical Musketeer Max. If your opponent tries to effect fail or tries to infinite impermanence, tries to use something like Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss that targets a monster to negate its effects, in archetype targeting negation, we can bounce it in order to not only make sure that effect resolves, but also to get back whatever musket we sent to graveyard for the Link summon. This also doesn't just apply to our monsters, it's also removal for our opponent's Link monsters, putting them back so far. If our opponent goes into a Link 3, let's say for example they're playing Salamangreat, they go into Promethean Princess but don't activate the effect on, like, it's not on summon, it's an ignition effect. We can then on summon at the resolution go Blink Out to bounce their Promethean Princess, and boom. The problem is dealt with, and if we activate it in column of a musket monster, we even get more advantage. So I think Blink Out is an incredible card, and I think more people should be looking out for it this metagame. We're on 2 triple tactics talents for hand traps, as well as 1 column of the grave, and then for our own hand traps, we're on triple infinite impermanence because it's a column-based spell trap, so I thought it was gonna be really funny, and triple Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit in order to stop stuff like Tenpai. It's also pretty decent against other stuff like it's not the best against Snake Eye. However, there are certain junctions where if you pair it Ghost Ogre with an Imperm, it may be enough to stop their game plan. However, with this deck, your game plan isn't to completely stop their game plan, like I said before, because you still want them to end on something on board, and the reason for that is because of our Link monster, Magical Musketeer Max. It needs a level later over, and that's because of our Link monster, Magical Musketeer Max. It needs a level 8 or lower Magical Musket monster. If it's Link summoned, you can activate one of these effects. So again, if we use Into the Brains to Link summon it, this effect is going to be protected. We can either add Magical Musket spells or traps with different names from our deck to our hand up to the number of monsters our opponent controls, or special summon Magical Musket monsters with different names from your deck up to the number of spells and traps your opponent controls. So against decks like Labyrinth, you get a Soul Charge from deck, and against decks like Snake Eyes, you get Rhoda, not necessarily Rhoda, you get to search your deck for most likely about 2 to 4 of spells and or traps that are musket related, which guess what, we're playing 1, 2, 3, 4. Playing 4 different Magical Musket spells or traps, so we can almost always get that upper echelon of search ability. But we are playing 3 of it for that reason. It also has that effect where you can activate them from hand, but this card has a giant target on its back for Ash Blossom, Imperm, Valor, like I was saying. However, with Into the Brains, It removes every point of interaction functionally, and if we hard make it, Blink Out removes Imperm, Veiler, all that sort of thing. So we're really trying to insulate ourselves from getting interacted on, specifically on Magical Musketeer Max. However, once it resolves, the card has already used all of its value, and it is just as good, if not worse, than any other Magical Musketeer monster in our deck, because Max doesn't have a column effect, unfortunately. He doesn't have an effect if you activate something in column. He doesn't care. But these guys do. So these guys are going to get you continuous advantage, while Max is kind of like a one-time burst of advantage. So maybe try and think about it that way. For links, we're on our link pool is going to be kind of whatever, since we're on Prosperity. However, these are just cards that we can play in order to climb and play pretty decently playing this deck. We're on one Dark to Dark Charmer Gloomy, since we're on dark links like IP Masquerena, SP Little Knight, and perhaps we can grab stuff from our opponent's graveyards. We are on one Line of the Light Charmer Lustrous, because all of these are light fiends, so we can perhaps grab something that way. We're on one Muckracker from the Underworld, since we're a Fiend deck. This lets us get Fiends back from graveyard, especially if we've been interacted with on Magical Musketeer Max. Kind of lets us recoup our plays. One SP Little Knight, format Superstar. This card, unfortunately, is really, really good in this deck. Because Max is a link one that basically does nothing, as long as you can put another body on field, SP Little Knight is ripe for the making. So unfortunately with this deck, not playing with an SP Little Knight is really going to hinder your performance comparative if you do have it. However, it's not going to be the difference maker, I don't think. It's not like a deck where it's going to be the difference maker whether or not you win or lose. However, it does make your life a lot easier. One solution is to play cards like Nightmare Phoenix or Nightmare Unicorn. Since we are on a pros board, it doesn't really hurt the most to play these cards that are a little bit not as great. However, they are still not bad, and especially with Nightmare Phoenix, this deck doesn't really have a way to get rid of back row that isn't face up. So Phoenix and Unicorn can help you with that. I already mentioned IP Masquerena, just being able to be a card you can go into a bunch of these cards with. Which is nice. I already went over Unicorn as well. We're on one Access Code Talker. Typically, we actually don't want to banish this with Prosperity, because it's our only real way to kill our opponent in any reasonable amount of time, which is funny enough. However, this next card is a card that we might want to consider banishing off of Pros, but being Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. If we use Magical Musketeer for spells, for our opponent's spells and traps, meaning we special summon monsters, if they have a problematic monster on field, we can Underworld Goddess it away. However, that specific game state isn't the easiest to come across, where they have a big powerful monster and then a million back row, and they're not stopping your Magical Musketeer Max effect or doing anything on resolution, so keep that in mind. And then our last cards are going to be one Bagoosker, one Typhon, and then one Zeus. In our side deck, I would also always recommend running that third Dancing Needle in the side, or the second one if you're only choosing the main one, just because if you go against a graveyard deck, it's just kind of wins you the game if you draw it or you see it. We're on Bestial, since we're a light deck, being Magnemut, Jerusalem, Ball Drake, and then cards to search off Magnemut being Phantasme. We can also decide these in for link-based strategies. And good thing Phantasme is getting a reprint, so it's a little bit more budget-friendly. And then this deck, I wouldn't play this in my versions. However, this deck can definitely play it, being Dimension Shifter. We could probably cut like one dock in order to put it in and not rely as heavily on graveyard interactions, because this deck technically doesn't really need stuff to go to graveyard. It does hurt it by basically removing the resources from the loop forever. However, we can kind of like try to outgrind our opponent in that first turn, and it'll really give us a step up in doing so. But that's about it for the profile. Please let me know what you all thought in the comments below. Did you like it? Did you not like it? What cards are you running in your Musket profiles? I want to hear all about it. But thank you all for watching the video. If you still are, it means a lot to me, and I will be seeing you all later. Bye-bye! Thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you wanted to talk to more Yu-Gi-Oh players like yourself, I would highly recommend checking out our Discord server. Link is going to be in the description, as well as the QR code on screen. We do talk somewhat frequently about Yu-Gi-Oh and the current meta, so I would really enjoy to see you there. As well as we do recently now have channel memberships available on our YouTube channel, where we have 3 different tiers. We have Super Supporter at $2 a month, where you get loyalty badges, emojis, guaranteed comment responses, a shout out at the end of every video, as well as access to the members only Discord channel, where you get early sneak peeks at future videos. There is the Giga supporter at $5 a month, where you have early access to all new videos about a day or two before they go up, as well as all the previous offers. And for $15 a month, we do have our final tier, which is going to be Femboy Fanatic. You get a guaranteed customized video every single month, as well as 1 hour of my time. Could be for anything you'd like. You want a duel? Absolutely. You want me to help build the deck? Absolutely. You want to play some Helldivers? Sure. I'll do anything for an hour once a month. But supporting does help me out quite a lot, and it does help me produce all of these videos. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll be seeing y'all later. Bye bye.